A quiet village, a fading mural, and a little boy with a paintbrush become the last hope to stop a powerful developer from tearing down everything that feels like home. But when art meets heart and silence speaks louder than money, one decision will change their lives forever. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video and tell us where are you watching from. Now let's jump into the story. The sun rose quietly over Willowshade, casting a soft orange light over the rooftops of the small lakeside village. The air smelled of pine and old bricks. Nina Carver stepped out of her cottage, wearing a smudge of dried paint on her cheek and a rolled-up canvas under her arm. The early morning was her favorite part of the day. It was the only time when everything was still, when dreams had not yet been interrupted by noise or Warenina lived alone in the smallest house on Ivy Lane, a crooked little place that leaned slightly to one side, as if tired from standing too long inside. The cottage, there were paintings on every wall, some half-finished, some bursting with color. They told stories of the village, its people, and the laughter of children that once echoed through its quiet streets. Each morning, Nina walked to the Willowshade Youth Center, a low brick building with peeling paint and a heart that refused to stop beating there. She taught art to children who had nowhere else to go after school. Some came hungry, some came tired, all of them left with their hands stained in color and their hearts a little lighter. On this particular morning, Nina passed the bakery where Mrs. Flanagan was arranging loaves in the window. She waved and smiled. A few streets down, she saw young Eli sitting on the library steps, sketching something on a notepad. Eli was only 8, but his drawings held more emotion than most adults could express with words. He looked up when he saw Nina and gave her a small, quiet smile. "Morning, Eli," Nina said, crouching beside him. "What are you drawing today?" Eli turned the sketchpad around. It showed a house split in two, with a child standing in the middle holding a single paintbrush. Nina felt a lump rise in her throat. It was not the first time Eli had drawn something that felt heavier than his Aggie think. "This one needs color," Nina said gently. Eli nodded but did not speak. He rarely did. Instead, he followed her like a shadow to the youth center, where the other children were already waiting. They called out to her with messy hands and bright eyes. Nina felt her usual joy return. These were her people. This was her Placenta Day. "We are painting memories," she announced, "not the ones in your head, but the ones in your heart. Can anyone tell me what that means?" Hands flew up. Children shared stories of their pets, their grandparents, their favorite rainy days. Nina smiled as they began dipping brushes into jars of paint and turning blank walls into oceans, forests, and dreams outside. However, the mood was not so light. A black SUV rolled down the street, its tinted windows catching the reflection of the colorful murals that lined the youth center walls. Inside sat Theo Langford, a man whose name was whispered in corporate meetings and printed on real estate contracts. He was tall, neatly dressed, and always checking his watch. He was in Willowshade for one reason: development. This company had bought several old plots in the area, planning to replace them with modern glass buildings, clean, fast, expensive. As he stepped out of the car, he looked around with the same interest. "One might give an outdated book quaint," he said under his breath. His assistant handed him a tablet showing the layout of the planned construction: 50 new apartments, a fitness center, and underground parking. Everything clean, everything organizational. He saw the wallet was the largest mural in Willowshade, a burst of color and feeling that stretched from end to end. Children laughing under a rainbow sky, hands reaching out to one another. Houses with hearts in their windows. It was signed simply "The Children of Willowshade." Theo paused. Something about it made him stop. He could not explain it. Perhaps it was the joy in the paint or the innocence in the eyes. Whatever it was, he stood there for longer than usual behind him. Nina approached, wiping her hands on a rag. She had seen the SUV and knew what it meant. "You like it?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Theo turned slowly. "It is impressive. The community painted it together." Nina replied, "Every child had a hand in it. They come here to feel safe. They come here to be seen." Theo gave a polite nod. "I appreciate that, but this building is scheduled for removal." Nina's face changed. "Removal?" "Yes, we are redeveloping the area, improving it." Theo repeated as If to reassure himself, Nina looked at the mural, then back at him. Do you know what this wall means? It is not just paint, it is memory and hope. You cannot bulldoze that without crushing the people behind it. Theo hesitated. He was not used to being challenged, especially not by someone in paint-stained clothes with fire in their icy and following the law. Miss Carver, permits have been approved. We will offer relocation options for any families affected. It will be better progress. Always is progress. For whom? Nina asked. For the people who live here or the people who will come after them. Theo did not answer. Instead, he checked his watch again and walked away, leaving Nina standing alone by the walls. She turned back toward the youth center. Eli was watching from the doorway. He had heard everything. Nina forced a smile and ruffled his hair. Don't worry, she whispered. We are not done painting yet. The wind blew gently through the trees that lined the edge of Willowshade Lake. It carried the sound of children's laughter mixed with the distant hum of traffic and the faint strokes of paintbrushes on canvas. Inside the youth center, Nina Carver sat on the floor surrounded by 7 children, each holding a small canvas. The theme for the day was expression without words. She had told them to paint how they felt. No rules, no pressure, just color. Eli sat slightly apart from the others near the window. He had a blank canvas in front of him and a pencil in hand. His eyes were focused and quiet. Like always, he never spoke much, but Nina had learned to read him through the movement of his hands and the softness of his lineage. Began to sketch a figure, a child with large eyes sitting alone on a bench, the sky above. The child was dark, but there was a small sun peeking through a cloud. Nina leaned over and smiled. Eli, this is beautiful. He looked up for a second and nodded. Just once, a small gesture that meant more than words. At the same time across town, Theo Langford sat in a high-backed chair in a glass building that looked down on Willowshade. His office was filled with models of buildings and digital screens showing future projects. He had not thought about the mural since he left the village 2 days ago, but he had thought about the woman and her voice, the way she had spoken with steady fire. She was not angry, she was not rude. She simply believed in something so deeply it made him uncomfortable. His assistant entered the room with a report. He barely looked at it. Instead, he opened a drawer and pulled out a folder he had taken from his son's room that morning. Inside were several drawings, simple crayon images of houses, trees, and people, but one caught his attention. A bright picture of a red building with big windows and smiling faces. Drawn all across the walls in the corner, in small shaky letters, it read, Art Center. Theo sat back in his chair and stared at the drawing. His son had never talked about the art center before. Theo had only learned yesterday that Eli had been attending classes there. For almost 2 months, his nanny had mentioned it in passing. A place he goes after school, a place he asks to stay longer each day. Theo had been too focused on his deadlines to ask questions. He had told himself that as long as Eli was safe, he was doing his job as a father, but now he realized he had not been listening. Eli left the office without a word. He drove straight to Willowshade, not in a suit this time, but in jeans and a jacket. He parked a few blocks away and walked the rest of the way to the youth center. He stopped just outside the window where he could see Incidentina sat in the middle of the room with the children. Her voice was soft, her smile was kind. She moved from one child to another, helping, guiding, encouraging. Eli was still drawing, his small hand moving carefully across the paper, his shoulders relaxed. His face calm. Theo had not seen his son look like that in a very long time. Stepped back and leaned against the wall. He stayed there for a long time, listening, watching, thinking. He remembered the first time he held Eli in his arms, how small and helpless he had felt, how he had promised to always protect him somewhere. Along the way, he had lost that feeling, replaced it with contracts and concrete. Next day, he returned to the youth center. This time during drop-off, he walked Eli to the door. The boy looked up at him, a bit confused. You're coming in? Theo nodded. Just for a moment. Inside, Nina looked up in surprise when she saw him. Mr. Langford. Theo raised a hand. No titles, please, just Theo. May I have a word? Nina glanced at the children. They were busy with their paints. She nodded and led him outside. He stood under the mural, the colors still bright in the early light. I didn't know Eli came here, Theo began. Nina crossed her arms. And now you do. I watched yesterday from the window. You are good with them, thank you. He looked down. He used to talk more before his mother passed. He was only 5 and Nina softened, just slightly. Eli is special, he feels things deeply, and he speaks through art. You've given him something I could not. Theo admitted a space to be himself. Nina looked away for a moment. Then why tear it down? The question hung in the air like thick fog. I don't know. Theo answered quietly. Money, plans, pressure, all the usual reasons. But none of them feel strong enough. Anymore. Nina studied him. You can change the plan, not alone, but maybe together. He met her eyes. If you'll help me. Nina hesitated. The hurt was still there, but so was the hope. She thought of Eli and the way his face lit up when he painted. I will help for the children, not for you. That's enough, Theo said. They stood together in silence this time. It was not uncomfortable this time. It spoke louder than anything either could say. Inside, Eli was drawing again. This time the bench was not empty. A tall man and a kind woman sat on either side of the child. The sun was fully out. Now the clouds had disappeared. The first sign of trouble arrived with a loud engine and a metal fence. Early on a Monday morning, Nina opened the youth center and found workers unloading heavy machinery across the street. A tall man in an orange vest placed signs around the property. Caution, construction area. Nina felt her chest tighten. She had hoped the conversation with Theo meant something had changed, but now the machines were here, and they had not stopped. Inside the youth center, the children arrived one by one. Some were sleepy, some were curious about the noise outside. Eli stood near the window watching in silence. His hand gripped the strap of his backpack tighter than usual. Nina tried to keep her voice cheerful. Today, we are going to paint something strong, something that cannot be torn down. She gave each child a long piece of paper. I want you to paint what you think this place means, not just the building, but everything in it. Your friends, your stories, your dreams. Colors began to fill the room. Bright skies, wide arms, sunlight, and flowers. Even quiet. Eli painted a scene with many faces standing together. No words, just a group of people linked by invisible threads. Nina watched their work with pride, but her heart was heavy when class ended. She walked to the construction site and asked for the supervisor. He was polite but firm. We are following the approved timeline. Demolition begins next week. The land was bought fair and square. Nina felt a wave of helplessness, but she did not let it show. That evening she met with some of the village residents. In the church basement, the room was small but filled with voices. Mrs. Flanagan, the baker, Mr. Ortiz, the retired teacher, parents of the children who came to the youth center. They all had the same question. What can we do? Nina stood up. We paint, we tell our story with color. They may have permits, but we have walls. She raised a large rolled canvas and unrolled it on the table. We cover the village with art. Every wall, every fence, every forgotten space. We show them this place is a liveth room. Grew quiet for a second. Then a voice said, I have painted home. Another voice added, my grandson can draw soon. Hands were raised everywhere. Plans were made. A list of supplies began to grow. They would not give up without trying. Within days, willow shade was changing, not with steel and glass, but with color. Murals appeared on alley walls and shop shutters. A tree with rainbow leaves near the bakery. A river flowing through. Dancing children outside the library. Nina guided it all with a calm determination. She slept little but smiled more. Even Theo noticed. He drove by in his car and saw the colors from a distance. He stopped and walked through the streets. Children waved, neighbors stared. He read messages written in paint. Our stories live here. Progress needs heart. He felt something shift inside him, a quiet guilt, a sense that maybe he had been wrong. Returned to his office and stared at the blueprint. 50 apartments, modern design, private gym. He looked at the open area labeled for removal. He knew what stood there, the youth center, his son's favorite place. The one spot where Eli had begun to smile again. Called his team, asked them what would happen if the youth center stayed. They told him the numbers would change, the profits would fall, the investors might pull back. It was risky, it was messy, but it was possible. Later that week, Theo visited Eli's room. He saw a new drawing taped to the wall that showed a tall building with a garden at its base. In the garden, children played. and on the rooftop stood a woman holding a brush. Eli looked up from his desk. "Do you like it?" "Do." Theo saw it. "Is that Nia?" Eli nodded. "Is this your dream?" Elaine nodded again, then whispered, "Please don't take it away." Next morning, the news spread quickly. Through Willowshade, the youth center had received a delay notice. Construction on that block would stop. Nina read the letter 3 times before believing it. It was signed by Theo himself. At celebration came with questions. People were unsure. Was this a trick? A pause before the final blow. Nina stood on the center steps and addressed the growing crowd. "We do not stop. We keep painting. We keep showing them that this place matters." The children painted more than ever. They painted birds flying over buildings, hands reaching out of windows, sunlight peeking from clouds, and Eli painted again. This time it was the mural outside the center, but he added something new, a large heart in the middle of the sky. Nana placed her hand on his shoulder. "Thank you, Eli." He gave her a shy smile and kept painting. Spring arrived early in Willowshade. The trees bloomed with soft white flowers, and the air smelled of fresh grass and wet paint. The streets looked different. Now walls that were once dull now told stories in color. Every corner of the village had been touched by a brush, by a hand, by a heart. That Corette, the youth center, stood proudly at the center of it, all its walls wrapped in a mural that stretched like a ribbon. One side showed children painting under a bright sky. Another side showed neighbors sharing bread and laughter. The final wall was new, finished just the day before. It showed a child standing between 2 adults holding their hands, smiling up at the sky. In the middle of the sky was a house floating on clouds, painted with soft gold and deep blue. Nina stood quietly in front of it with Eli at her side. He had painted most of it, each stroke careful, each color chosen with thought. "Does it look right?" he asked her. "It looks like home," she replied. Inside the center, preparations were underway. Tables were set up, banners hung across windows. Today was the official opening of the Willowshade Arts and Learning Hub, a place built from what once was a place created by people who refused to be erased. Theo arrived just after noon. He walked through the crowd, shaking hands, nodding to familiar faces. Some people greeted him with cautious smiles, others still looked away. He did not blame them. He had done damage, and now he was trying to undo it, one step at a time. Found Nina near the front steps, helping a young girl adjust her dress. "You came," she said. Without surprise. "I said I would," Theo replied. He looked around. "You did all this?" "No," she answered. "We did together." Ailey spotted his father and ran up to him holding a drawing. "I made this for you." Theo unfolded the paper. It showed the youth center with a tree growing from its roof. At the top of the tree were 3 apples labeled with their names. Eli, Nina. Theo smiled and bent down. "Thank you. This is the best thing I own." Later that day, the ribbon was cut. A small ceremony was held in the main room. Nina gave a short speech. She spoke of the power of art, the strength of stories, and the beauty of listening. Theo spoke too. He admitted his mistakes. He thanked the community for their patience and for their courage. He promised to support the center through his foundation, not just with money but with time, with action. After the speeches, people wandered through the rooms admiring the children's art. There were paintings of boats sailing through candy oceans, houses flying with balloons, hands reaching for stars. In one corner, Eli stood proudly beside his mural. People gathered around asking him questions. He answered, some with words, some with nods, some with quiet smiles. Nina watched him and felt something rise in her chest, a warmth, a peace. Not everything had been fixed, but something real had begun. As the sun began to set, family started to leave. The crowd thinned. Nina walked to the front door and stepped outside. The sky was painted in pink and orange, soft clouds floating above the rooftops. Theo joined her. He held a small notebook in his hand. He opened it and showed her a sketch, a design for a new garden behind the center, a quiet space, a green space for art, for Resty. "Want to build this?" he said. "For the kids, for you." Nina looked at the sketch, then at him. "You are not who you were when you came here, no," he said, "and that is because of you and because of Eli and because of all of this." Nodded slowly. The trust was not complete, but it was growing like a seed planted in fresh soil. Laylee came out just then holding 2 cups of lemonade. He gave one to Nina and one to his father. He looked between them and asked, "Can we stay here for Nina?" Smiled, "As long as this place stands, as long as people care. This will be home." Eli looked up at the mural, his mural, and whispered then, "We will always have home." Theo put an arm around his son. Nina stood beside them. They said nothing, but in the silence, there was peace, and in the mural, there was everything.